And blessed to be a part of your day. Kevin Miller in the morning, KIDO Talk Radio. Don't forget the KIDO Talk Radio newsletter available by simply going to our website, signing up. It's free. You get it once a week. We promise not to spam you. And, of course, you get a lot of great information, wonderful stories like the one currently about the F-18s versus the A-10s flying over the Treasure Valley. Just another service we provide for free. Don't forget the KIDO Talk Radio app, which is free as well on Google Play and, the Apple, the App Store on Apple. And like I said, it's very simple. You don't have to go through any third-party vendors. It's just KIDO Talk Radio, and boom, you have your favorite radio station on the right side. Joining us now, Michael Doherty, to talk a little cyber security. Sir, how are you?
Well, good morning. How are you?
Well, it is great to wake up on the right side. So we take a look at last night on CNN. I could not believe this. Poor little St. Anselm's College in New Hampshire. We had not one, not two, but not four, 5 devious little libs. We've got Kamala. We've got Mayor Pete. We've got, Kamala. I'm trying to remember Amy Klobuchar. I'm sure I forgot one of them. But, perhaps we might have as many as 25 Democratic presidential candidates before this thing is done.
And watch them eat themselves up. It'll be a dance, and who can be more far left and outrageous? I mean, yesterday I think we have free college and all debts waived. So the buying of the public's vote continues, and of course it's all the big nasty wealthy people that don't do their fair share that's going to pay for all this. It's just evidently it doesn't get old.
What do you make of Mayor Pete there? He seems to have a great personal resume, but politically not so much. But Mayor Pete seems to know everything at the tender age of 35 or 37.
Well, you have to remember that people that are farther on the left believe in feelings and the future, and it's always safe because it's nothing that can be really debated in reality. It's always a parallel universe or an idea, and that keeps them all coddled and safe. And he's calm and he's likable and he seems very authentic, and so he brings these nice feelings out, right? And it's really great to be young and have all these ideals because you don't have any experience to have anything go against you, right? There's no time for failure. So, I mean, that's why they embraced Obama. There wasn't enough miles on the odometer to know what was really going to go on. So, it doesn't surprise me at all. I mean, but then you've got Sanders and Biden leading. So, and Sanders is certainly okay with felons voting. The Boston Bombers find a vote, but that would make people uncomfortable, so maybe that'll harm him later. Who knows?
Well, then you have this proposal by Elizabeth Warren to get rid of all the student loan debt.
Right. It's, now, how many takers, how long is the broken record going to keep playing before people get it? There's no such thing. It doesn't work. I mean, it devalues what you have. It compromises the education you get. It lowers everything everywhere, and then it makes it worthless. And this is the thing right now. If you get the wrong type of college education, and they can't pass a law to make you smart. They can't pass a law to make you suddenly have the skills to be a cyber expert, for example, or whatever. Where really the growth is going to be. So it's just the same theater, same play, different actors. We're gonna make you a victim. We're gonna be the person that saves you from the villain. In exchange for that dynamic, you're gonna give us the vote. And this week, it is let's get rid of student loan debt and let's let felons vote.
Michael Doherty joining us here. Again, it's whatever, nearest outrage. Socialism has become mainstream.
Well, again, this is about experience, right? So, you've got a whole generation that have no experience with the history of really wars and dictators. They've been born with a very powerful computer in their hand. So they think everything comes to them and everything should be fine. And they've gone very, very soft. They have no direct experience on how it doesn't work and it harms people. It always sounds good. I mean, and it's what's terrifying is how much world history we have that it doesn't work, and how lazy and indifferent the youth is, because they have so much at their fingertips. So they just think, snap, here, it'll just fall. But if governments get control of the internet and get control of speech, these kids, as they get deeper in adulthood, will be sitting ducks. And so I don't know. I get a little concerned about the lack of preparation they have for the real world. Because listen, human behavior hasn't changed over the century. It's not going to change the next 20 years either. Or will they change and grow like everyone else tends to as they get deeper into adulthood? I mean, I know a lot of friends that can't believe at our age that they're all loving Donald Trump. They laugh at themselves. So we'll see.
Michael Daugherty joining us, the CEO of Cyber Education Foundation and the founder of the Justice Society. Also, you can check out his book, The Devil Inside the Beltway, the shocking expose of the U.S. government's surveillance and overreach into cybersecurity, medicine, and small business, with Kevin Miller on KIDO Talk Radio, 107.5 FM, 580 AM. What's the world of Silicon Valley like? Is it this year's our version of the Gilded Age? Are they, do they have secret bonfires at night and run around in robes or something like that?
Well, they try to do that at Nevada parties or California parties, but Silicon Valley is a very innovative place, and it's really ironic because it is sort of the poster child for free enterprise and how much wealth it's generated. Yet it's generated so much wealth and such a lopsided amount of wealth for people that don't have a lot of life experience. They're in an echo chamber socially, and it moves so fast. So that, they, like Microsoft, learned the hard way about what happens if you ignore the government, and it really damaged Microsoft, and it took them at least a decade to recover. So the rest of these companies know now, and they build these beautiful gilded offices in Washington and try to be friends with people that have political power. And now they've got so much wealth, they feel a need to give back. And their version of giving back is social engineering, messaging, throttling conversation, compromising the First Amendment, influencing us, and using that platform to be deciders. So there's a whole mix of what goes on in Silicon Valley, and it's something to be reckoned with, because you can argue that they have obviously more influenced the U.S. culture the past decade than anything Washington, D.C. has done.
Michael Daugherty joining us, Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio, 107.5 FM, 580 AM. Let's talk a little bit about the campaign and how social media will be used. Barack Obama had one of the co-founders of Facebook to help him back when Facebook wasn't Facebook. Now we've got Snapchat, Twitter, Instagram, everything else. Michael Daugherty's social media. How crazy will it be, and how dependent are 18 to 34-year-olds on getting their news from social media as opposed to a traditional form of news?
I think there is no such thing as traditional news anymore, and so it will. And Twitter was, in hindsight, really Trump's most brilliant move, because it was a drill through the granite wall of the mainstream media to get to the public and cut out the media that gets to be the decider and the spinner, and because the media kills story through taking the action out of the room and it lets it starve and suffocate. So as we have organically grown around that wall that is the mainstream media, Twitter is a huge deal for Donald Trump, and it will not stop. So watch Twitter rumbling now about restricting or labeling him, which could totally backfire, because it totally supports what Trump says about the mainstream media. So, obviously, it's like cable TV dial, right? You have 500 channels, 485 of them are junk. And so there'll be a lot of chatter, and a lot of screaming, and a lot of echo chamber. And people tend to ironically isolate themselves more. But it is Trump's platform, and as President of the United States, they're going to report on him. So you think he used it effectively the first time around. That was before he's president. Now, I mean, now he really gets a load of coverage. And the Democrats, remember, it was the Republicans that had 20-something people running. And now the Democrats have the same issue. And let's watch them eat through each other. But they don't have substantial ideas. All they have is fear, uncertainty, and doubt. So they're just going to be, it's going to be like a bunch of dogs barking in the same yard. And it's just going to be noise. And, and then Trump will use it to mock them. So it's a double-edged sword.
Sure.
Yeah, it'll just make the noise louder and the entertainment more compelling, and the mainstream media more frustrated.
Well, we like that, Michael Daugherty. If people want to get a hold of you, what can they do?
MichaelJDaugherty.com, which is the devil inside the beltway.com, about my book, and you can check things out there. And from there, you can follow me on Twitter or Facebook.
Yes, you love the social media, and it loves you, sir.
I really don't use it that much, believe it or not. But, unfortunately, if I don't use it, I get in trouble with my publisher.
Well, when you're hanging out with Zuckerberg, I guess you have to.
Yeah, right. Yeah, he has me over for beer all the time. Not. Good talking to you.
You take care, Michael Daugherty. All right, our great friend. Coming up, one presidential candidate says it's time for executive orders for gun control, and it's time to impeach Donald Trump. And remember that Eagle man. Well, the judge that gave him a sweetheart deal says that he violated his probation after that deadly crash that killed a young mother. We'll have details next. A lot to talk about, a lot to get out in front of you today, and a lot to hear about with Kevin Miller only on KIDO Talk Radio.
The Eagle man who killed a young mother in a 2017 drunken driving wreck is again facing the possibility of prison time. A judge ruled this afternoon that 43-year-old Adam Paulson intentionally tampered with an alcohol monitoring bracelet, violating his probation. Paulson was originally sentenced to probation earlier this year after being convicted of involuntary manslaughter in the death of 24-year-old Madeline Dusky. The driver was more than twice the legal limit when his pickup truck crashed into Dusky, who was crossing Eagle Road in a crosswalk. His sentence drew outrage from the victim's parents and other advocates who say it was too lenient. Paulson denied tampering with his ankle monitor, arguing today that the weight loss caused the device to fit too loosely. He also suggested that the monitor may have registered his cologne as alcohol. His arrest on the probation violation came less than 2 months.
By the way, you're listening to KIDO Talk Radio, 107.5 FM, 580 AM. Yes, Mr. Paulson's claiming he lost weight, and his cologne triggered the ankle monitor registering the alcohol, however that works. Sadly, let's continue on with this story.
From jail. Judge Deborah Bale could decide to impose prison, some jail time, or Paulson's entire 15-year prison sentence at his next hearing June 10th.
Here we go. And by the way, thanks to our friends at Channel 7 for that. This is a local story that is very tragic. You take a look at, our judicial system, the adversarial system that we have here in the United States of America. You have Mr. Paulson, who's destitute now, according to published reports, saying that his conviction should be thrown out because some type of test showed that the victim, the mother of the two little kids, she was walking and it was dark or some kind of ridiculous thing. I struggle with stories like this because we live in a small town. We live in a small area. And when you talk about somebody like Mr. Paulson, people know him. I'm sure there are people that are disappointed, but they're cheering for him. And then you take a look at the family, the little children that will grow up without a mama. The idea that Mr. Paulson really got a slap on the wrist from the judge. And I've had friends of mine that have appeared under this judge. And quite frankly, they say the judge is really good. A good judge, a fair judge. In this case, the judge got it wrong. And at 580-5436, 580-KIDO, a message needs to be sent here. A message needs to be sent when we're talking about costing the life of a young mother. And Judge Bale made a bad call. Now, Judge Bale can redeem herself in the eyes of the community that she represents by saying, well, Mr. Paulson, you had an opportunity. It's time for you to go serve some time. Now, it's very easy for us to be judgmental, and the Bible says, judge unless you want to be judged. But in this case, when we're talking about beautiful young Maddie Dusky and her 2 children, beautiful young kids, well, you do this. You're convicted of being driving while intoxicated, and you get time served, and then you have to pay restitution. And then Mr. Paulson, in published reports and court filings, he portrays himself as a victim because he doesn't have any money, because he was falsely convicted. I don't know. Maybe it was having the experience of both personally and at school, the idea of corporal punishment, the idea of consequences for most of us was put into our being. And Mr. Paulson's no young kid. What is he, like 40-something? And still doesn't get it. A 43-year-old man convicted of killing a 24-year-old woman. Alcohol content was 0.21, more than twice the legal limit. And you get time served, and you don't have to go to jail? Well, with all due respect, if I were Mr. Paulson, I would be living the straight and narrow. And I don't think I'd be throwing the cologne on and blaming anybody but myself. There comes a time in life, and those of you that get it, like the gentleman that was in front of me today who was working construction this morning, when you work with your hands, when you work in the trades, sooner or later, it's not you if the thing is crooked. It is you. It's not somebody else. You work in the trades, you work for yourself, you are responsible for your own success. Mr. Paulson is responsible for the death of Madeline Dusky. And we go back to the judge. Quite frankly, as we said and took your calls at 580-5436, 580-KIDO, Judge Deborah Bale should do the right thing and send Mr. Paulson away. He cannot handle, in my opinion, being out. And we're not saying this to stir things up, but somebody has to speak the truth. Somebody has to say, look, you had an opportunity. That sentence was too light to begin with. Drinking and driving in this community is an issue. Suicide in this community is a big issue. What message does that send that if you're found guilty with twice the legal limit of alcohol, of murder, of vehicular manslaughter, let me make sure I get it right, and then you have the audacity to appeal it to the Supreme Court, and then you get caught again? Well, if you ask most people that have been in the system, the presumption of innocence is lost once you've been convicted. 580-5436, 580-KIDO. Judge Bale needs to do the right thing. This is not good for her reputation. Again, a judge is supposed to be impartial. I still have not heard the justification of the light sentence. Again, a conviction, and then, you had the National Advocates for Mothers Against Drunk Driving condemning this decision, rightfully so. Traffic and weather together. Our time is 6:27. You're listening to KIDO Talk Radio, 107.5 FM, 580 AM with Kevin Miller in the morning. Good morning, Dave. And I'm Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio. Coming up, at one time, one of the most conservative states, not only in the West, but in the country, that would be Colorado. But what happened? Big money liberals came in. They legalized pot. The state went liberal. We have said that we will make sure that Idaho does not join Colorado in becoming another liberal dope-smoking state. However, in Colorado, just to show you how bad it's gotten, you would think that they're California Junior, a junior version of the Golden State. We'll tell you a little bit about that disturbing trend then. And an inspiring story out of Nampa, Idaho. You have an older gentleman who got thrown into the creek. Well, he fell into the creek. He fell into the canal. And thankfully, due to some wonderful work by some brave Idaho little boys, that gentleman is still around. We'll share that inspiration story with you as well. Plus, I promise, coming up after the news, last night's town hall meetings, there were 5 of them in a row at this college in New Hampshire, broadcast on CNN. And I was too busy working on my Mena, Arkansas backup to this career plan that I taped them all. But one senator made news, and it wasn't a good reason to make news. We'll tell you that next. Plus, get your reaction. We're just rolling. Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning, Maggie. Kevin Miller in the morning at KIDO Talk Radio. Coming up, your thoughts on Mr. Paulson and whether or not he should go back to prison, back to jail. Number one, and we have this, this big deal going on where we have one senator, one presidential candidate saying it's time to impeach President Trump. A lot going on today. Joining us now, before we take your calls, hang in there, our great friend Simon Owen joining us from Fox News Radio. Of course, when you hear Fox News Radio in the Treasure Valley, you're listening to KIDO Talk Radio on 107.5 FM, 580 AM. Simon, good morning.
Good morning, Kevin.
So what's the latest concerning what's going on in Sri Lanka? And, of course, obviously our thoughts and prayers go to those folks and what they're dealing with.
Well, the Sri Lankan president the Sri Lankan prime minister has just begun giving a news conference in Colombo, the capital, where he has said that the investigation is making good progress, but we are just at the very start of this news conference, so no more news than that so far. But this is a fast-moving situation. We've seen this morning already ISIS claim responsibility for these bombings, albeit a claim without offering any evidence, so it's impossible to take it too seriously at this stage. But there is a claim there from ISIS. Separately, the government has now said 321 people were killed in these bombings. So, this is a devastating wave of coordinated attacks, one of the world's worst terror attacks since 9/11 all those years ago. And separately, we've heard a little more about the possible motive. One of the defense ministers in Sri Lanka has told Parliament that investigators believe this was a retaliation for the New Zealand mosque attacks last month when 50 people were shot dead in Christchurch, New Zealand. And this minister who's been speaking to Parliament said that 2 local Islamist groups were believed to be responsible. But the authorities have also said that they would have needed support from international militants, and that would therefore tie in, if this ISIS claim turns out to be real, that would tie in with this suggestion that there had to be some kind of overseas involvement with this.
Indeed, of course, Sri Lanka continues to reel from this. Where do we go from here with this story? Obviously, the Prime Minister speaking, trying to rally not only the folks there, but around the world.
Well, they've put a state of emergency into effect, emergency rule, which, most countries have this sort of provisions around the world, but with Sri Lanka, they're very fresh in the mind of many because they were used during the civil war in that country, which lasted 26 years until it ended 10 years ago. So now these powers are back in force. The military and police have a sort of wider berth to detain and arrest suspects. They've also had a curfew in place, and the government shut down social media. But the fallout from this has rapidly turned into a crisis for the Sri Lankan government because it has acknowledged in the days following Easter Sunday that it received a warning from India earlier this month that a domestic Sri Lankan terror group, one of those named by the government, was planning a possible attack on churches. And there are suggestions that a dispute between Sri Lanka's president and his prime minister may have meant that the prime minister was not informed of this warning because he'd been shut out of top security meetings. These are 2 people with a relationship that has long been rumored to be fraught, but if it turns out that an internal feud in the Sri Lankan government meant that this warning was not given the credence it deserved, then, that is a serious failing by the Sri Lankan authorities.
Simon, we appreciate that. Thank you, sir.
Thanks, Kevin.
Thank you. Our great friend Simon Owen. We are taking your phone calls, 580-5436. 580-KIDO. We were talking about Adam Paulson, judge finding that he did violate his probation. We'll find out whether or not he goes back to jail in the death of Maddie Gusky. Let's go to your calls, and we go to Dennis in Meridian, who's been very patient. Dennis, good morning.
Hey, good morning.
Well, go ahead, please. Good to have you with us, sir.
Well, I've been listening for years, Kevin, and I get a lot of information from the public just by listening to your radio. I want to thank you very much. I'm a personal friend of the family's. I've known Maddie since she was a little girl, and I've sat through quite a few of these hearings. And to the public out there, there's a few things I haven't heard on the radio. That one in particular, at the time Adam was arrested for drunk driving, twice the limit, over the legal limit. He killed Maddie Dusky. He was on felony probation at the time for aggravated battery for beating his ex-wife. And I haven't heard that at all on some of these radio stations in the news, which when he came back to court, I think Dave Bell, his jail sentence that he sat in jail waiting for his case to come up was pretty much he sat in jail for his felony probation. Got it?
I'm listening, Dennis.
So, it's a tragic thing. She missed it. It's too bad. A lot of grief, but forgiveness on the family side. But he has shown no remorse on the stand or consented to killing Maddie. He has not said he's sorry, and that's what's pretty hard for the family and friends and the public, I think. He still says he's not guilty, which he did hit and kill her. And now maybe she'll get it right and put him maybe out of the way of the public's. We just need to be safe. Put him in jail.
We've never heard a lot about Madeline. Can you tell us a little bit about her?
Oh my gosh, just a beautiful, energetic girl, and a young girl. She, her parents' backpack. She was in the back of the backpack, and we went on hikes, and we get to the lake, and she would love to walk the shoreline and catch frogs and fish with her mom and dad. And she was very involved with her sports and had so many friends. She worked her butt off. Single mom, got her first home, and she worked hours and hours to remodel it. Spending time with her kids and her family, she was all about that, and just brought light into the room. Just a very beautiful young lady, and wonderful parents. She will be missed. She is missed.
Anything else you'd like to share with us here, Dennis? We appreciate you calling in. I know it's not easy.
No, it isn't. I tried to make this call a few times, and I've hung up, but because I'm a little angry. So I've written to my representatives. I've written to the judge. I've called the judge. I've done everything on my end to say my feelings. And another new thing that happened is he filed for indigent, which if you have to look that up. Adam Paulson filed for that, and here he's represented by David Leroy, and which is another thing you brought up about people in the community, small communities, who knows who, and how is it that he's to file indigent when he's represented by David Leroy? I'm sure it's a costly figure.
Right, and trying to overthrow his conviction.
Yes.
Clearly, Mr. Paulson has some issues with this, and the cologne story and the weight loss, I wish that he would just accept responsibility. I think that would echo the community.
It sure would. I think, people would, the word forgiveness is powerful.
Especially in this community. Dennis, thank you, and our prayers go to the family and whatever we can do, sir.
Well, thank you, Kevin.
Thank you. Dennis in Meridian calling, remembering Madeline Gusky, who was killed by drunk driver Adam Paulson, who was out, had time served, and then got caught again, allegedly violating the terms of his parole. The judge has found that. Sentencing will be in June. Now, if you want to keep the community safe, there have to be consequences to your actions. And Mr. Paulson has filed for an appeal of his conviction, saying that he was wrongfully convicted. As Dennis said, he's filed that he's broke, he's indigent, he doesn't have any money, yet he can still have an attorney make sure that he is properly represented in court. tell that to the children of the 24-year-old mother who's dead, who was doing nothing wrong, just crossing the street. 580-5436, 580-KIDO. Max in Garden City with Kevin Miller on KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning, Max.
Good morning, Kevin. How you doing, buddy?
I've had better days, and you, sir?
You know what? I've had better days, too, but this entire Paulson matter has caused me to do a little homework. And I ask a magic question: why is it that we, the greatest nation on earth, can take a lesson from communist China regarding drunk driving? I looked into the records of the Liaoning province. Minimum mandatory sentencing. First offense, 3 years. 6 years if there's injury or significant property damage. 20 years if there's loss of life. Repeat offenses are doubled. And in all cases, that person, once convicted, has permanent loss of driving privilege. What's wrong with that set of laws? If you're driving drunk, you're like a drunk monkey. As far as I'm concerned, there's not a hole deep enough to throw you into. I lost my baby sister to a drunk driver who was driving a taxi a year later. America's always been very squishy on this because alcohol was a great source of revenue to the government through taxes. Alcohol is a cultural thing. Booze is everywhere. The only real answer is to make the laws so damn tough that you won't do it, or launch another prohibition. What say you, buddy?
No, I'm down with you when it comes to the idea of toughening the laws. Obviously, people do make honest mistakes, but repeatedly, then we have some issues, and we have people that it is well known that, they have multiple arrests for drinking while intoxicated, and the consequences do not deter their actions, especially when you've taken someone's life, though. When you've taken someone's life.
If you made a mistake and it's your first time, 3 years in the can will prevent you making it again. Minimum, mandatory, 3 years. 6 years if you hurt somebody, 20 if you kill somebody, double anything if it's a second offense. If you're out there and you're a drunk driver or you drive drunk at all, you're doing the same thing as running through a Walmart with a shotgun blindfolded. You're doing the same thing, only a shotgun doesn't weigh 2 tons and it doesn't do 80 miles an hour. That's it. My anger's assuaged. Thanks to you, my sounding board. Thank you, Kevin Miller. Thank you, citizens of Idaho.
Thank you, Max. Let's go to Sam in Caldwell with Kevin Miller, KIDO Talk Radio. Hello, Sam.
Hey, buddy. Sorry. That's kind of hard to follow those two. Makes me feel a little, that's not good. Hey, on the terrorism was what I called about, these acts that are going on. I've often wondered how the Muslims come out. You'll have these celebrity Muslims, I'd call them, political Muslims in the United States are coming out, and they're opposed to terrorism. They're opposed to terrorism. And I've often wondered how they can do that. But if you'll look into it a little bit, according to the Quran, when a Muslim says they're opposed to terrorism, they are telling the truth. But the definition of terrorism in the Quran is some sort of an unlawful attack against a Muslim. That's the definition of terrorism. So they're telling the truth, but it's doublespeak. And so anytime these Muslim politicians and speakers and stuff come out and they're talking about how they're opposed to terrorism, they are telling the truth, but they're speaking a different language, and they know that you understand the word terrorism different than they do, and they also know that you don't know they're doing it. And so that's a bunch of blabber talk. And I'm with Max on that. Those are hard bonus call conversations there. I'm kind of with Max on that. You know what? First offense should be pretty severe. Second offense is complete loss of the ability to drive a car forever. And if you ever get caught operating a motor vehicle again, boy, it better be a medical emergency for your pregnant wife or something. But other than that, I mean, you're going to prison forever. That's what I'd do with it. People, they're not serious about enforcing the drunk driving laws. You kill somebody with an 8,000-pound car and you're out. You're wandering the streets with it. You get a little bracelet. The poor man. You got a little bracelet he has to wear. Seriously?
And he can't even do that correctly.
And he won't even do that. He won't do that. Don't give me the can't. Come on. And to try to play the victim card, oh my gosh. No, I'm with Max on this deal. I'm not necessarily the communist Chinese plan, but dude, you get caught driving drunk. That's a bad deal. It should be serious. He's talking 3 years there, whatever. It should be a serious thing. And you get caught a second time, you don't ever be found ever in control of a motor vehicle again, ever, after you get out for your second sentence, which should be worse. And if you get caught a third time, I feel so far. If they kill somebody, like if it's their third offense, and you kill somebody drunk, I think it's a death penalty. Because you don't belong. You've proven that you can't be trusted, period. Done. So, life in prison the third time around, you kill somebody, dude, you're done. You're out of here. Let God sort them out.
Sam, thank you.
You bet. Bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you for listening to KIDO Talk Radio. Okay, coming up next, one Western state wants to abolish ICE, while another Western presidential candidate says it's time to impeach President Trump. Waking up on the right side, we will counter those negative Nelly claims next. You're listening to Kevin Miller on your home for Sean Hannity, KIDO Talk Radio. Blessed to be with you. Rolling on the right side, Kevin Miller in the morning. KIDO Talk Radio coming up next hour of the Boise Boys, the big-time television show. It is back on TV. Boise native Luke Caldwell will join us. We'll talk a little bit about the housing market flipping. So many things going on in real estate. Who would have ever thought that real estate goes big time, where you would have these shows that basically show people flipping houses, making investments, and making a ton of money. But for Mr. Caldwell and others, it goes a lot deeper. And we will share his story coming up next hour. You don't want to miss that. Don't forget, KIDO Talk Radio, one of the many proud presenters of the Boise Music Festival coming up. For ticket information, you can go to BoiseMusicFestival.com or KIDOTalkRadio.com. Check out Pitbull, Tone Loc, and all the great stars. 10 years of magic here in the Treasure Valley. You don't want to miss that. Speaking of not missing, let's get you to work safely and on time. KIDO Talk Radio, traffic and weather together. Good morning, Dave. Kevin Miller in the morning, KIDO Talk Radio. Coming up, Luke Caldwell of the Boise Boys. He'll join us. We'll talk a little housing, a little entrepreneurship, house flipping, and just how his beloved Boise has changed over the years. Plus, more of your calls about the issues that matter to you. Don't miss it. KIDO Talk Radio. Good morning.